Welcome back. We're now joined in studio by Mr. Mokaya Orina, an advocate and a lecturer of public international law at Moore University, to discuss, of course, matters AU and ICC and more so the way forward. A very good morning to you, Mr. Orina. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for
Maybe you can start by telling us what you do with yourself, apart from lecturing.
Oh, well, I'm a practitioner in public international law and also our national law. So I practice law here in Kenya, and I also teach, and I'm a scholar at the same time. Basically, my main area of interest is public international law, with international criminal law being my main area of study. Yeah.
Okay.
So what expertise do you have in about ICC? What qualifies you to come and talk about ICC?
I wouldn't say I'm the sole expert in ICC, but ICC is and issues to do with ICC, international criminal law, have been of much interest to me in my studies and my continuing studies, that is. And it's an area I've researched quite well. I teach about international criminal law. So I would say I have a great interest in it to make me be in a position to talk about it.
So there's a meeting today at The Hague.
Yes.
Of state parties, why they want to change rules and laws about the operations of the ICC. What do you think about that?
Well, the Assembly of State Parties, which is meeting at The Hague, has every right to introduce any amendments to the statute if it so wishes, because Assembly of State Parties comprises of the states who are state parties to the statute itself, and the statute provides mechanisms through which states can introduce amendments if they wish to its own provisions, and that any amendments can be suggested by any state party. It's discussed. It's encouraged that any amendment is adopted by way of consensus, but if it's not adopted by way of consensus, then it's put to a vote where 2/3 majority will have to pass an amendment that has been suggested by a state or a group of states.
I've seen the Attorney General this morning or yesterday evening saying that this raft of amendments that they want to introduce have been discussed for months, and there's no possibility of them not going through. Is that so?
Well, the reason why the AG would say that they've been discussed for months is because the state parties would always like to have a consensus, would always want to agree instead of subjecting things to votes. So the reason why a party wishing to introduce an amendment would have to have discussed it a lot with other states is because they want it to sail through easily without really being defeated by way of vote or anything. And the statement by the AG is true, yes. These are amendments that have been discussed over time because of needs of states and the feeling that maybe there are things that can be changed within the statute to accommodate more, especially the interests and the concerns by the African Union, and especially in the Kenyan case, which concerns have been mainly about being required to be physically present in court. So one of such amendments which has been floated about attendance by video link has been discussed, and I think one of the proponents of the amendment is the United Kingdom. So it's something that has been discussed. Whether or not they've reached that consensus, we don't know. We wouldn't know till the Assembly of State Parties is held itself. So at the time when the amendment is presented before the Assembly of State Parties, it could be passed by consensus, which means that all states are in agreement. But if it's not passed by consensus, then it will have to acquire the 2/3 of the 122 states necessary for it to pass.
Which means what? That if it is passed, Uhuru will not go to The Hague in February.
Well, if an amendment is passed, that is...
that says that serving heads of state will not appear, or will not appear before the ICC or any other court.
If such an amendment is passed, The provisions in regard to amendments, which are found in Part 13 of the statutes, are to the effect that an amendment can only come into force a year after it has been passed by a 2/3 majority, and after the ratification documents to that amendment, after 7/8 of the states that passed the amendment have deposited the ratification documents with the Secretary General of the United Nations. That's when the amendment can come into force, which means if an amendment is passed this week, it will have to wait 12 months for it to come into force from the time it was passed.
So what is the
how does this help us?
Well, it means that any such amendment would not affect the ongoing cases, because a year would be too long, and the cases are proceeding, as we know. So,
Ms. Orina, is this our last option?
That question depends on what problem are we facing. First of all, is it an issue of attendance? Do we want our president to be here as the trials are ongoing? Or do we want that he be not prosecuted at all? I think the issue of which makes more sense to me is the agreement that a trial can be ongoing, but our president is here in our country to perform his constitutional functions. But the problem, as I said, is that even if such an amendment sails through, it will have to wait 12 months for it to be effective. So it won't have much effect on the ongoing case, because the case will begin in February 2014. Yeah.
Even if you have to go through video link, isn't it a fact that the requirement that on the day of the opening, when the charges are being read, the president must be there at the Hague himself personally? Or he can do that through video link also? Can he be charged through a video link?
Well, if an amendment was to be introduced and agreed,
and goes through, yeah.
Yes, and goes through and says that all trial can be conducted through video link, then he doesn't have to be there even at the opening. But the amendment might not be that it's a blanket, it might not apply like blanketly, but might specify that for particular sessions he has to be physically present. So, but you know, looking at the intention and the purpose of having him attend through video link is, and looking at the recent pronouncements by the appeals chamber of the ICC, that indeed an accused person has to be physically present, and under only exceptional circumstances he can be absent. So if this amendment were to restate clearly the position that, you know what, video link is still qualifies as being present, then so be it. It can be in Kenya while the opening is done.
Mr. Orina, please clarify this. Someone who sent in a message, and remember, you can get in touch with us 22422, and they're saying the Rome Statute provision on taking effect after 1 year, can it be amended? Or
well,
is that a set?
Yes.
Set?
That is found in the final clauses, specifically Article 121 of the statute, and which is to the effect that amendment, which provides for how amendments can be carried out. It's that a vote can be at the Assembly of State Parties and 2/3 majority, and this amendment can take effect after 1 year. So if you want to amend Article 121 of the statute, which says that amendment can only take effect after 1 year,
After 1 year, yes.
Still you're bound by the original version, which says that even the amendment to Article 121 will take effect a year after.
And so we're here for another 2 years.
Yeah, so really I don't think that the solution will be amending the clause that provides for amendments, because at the time when the Rome Statute was negotiated and the state parties agreed to have this clause that an amendment was going to take a year, there was a reason behind that. In that, you know, they don't want, I think they're kind of, they have to give a transitional period. Even withdrawal from the statute, if a state wanted to withdraw from the statute, it gives the effect, it comes into force a year after a state has deposited the documents to express its interest to withdraw. So there has to be that transition. So even that provision itself, for you to amend it, it has to take effect after a year.
So as a scholar, do you think we are wasting our time?
At the Assembly of State Parties?
Yeah,
or
wherever, all these efforts.
I think
a lot of money has been expended do this shuttle diplomacy. And Kalonzo Musyoka, William Ruto, all of them are trying to hold these things. But it looks like we have got to a dead end.
The way I understand the law of treaties and especially the development of international custom is that states, whatever is happening within the African Union is good for our posterity, in that we are not doing things for just today, but for also tomorrow. So if it's felt within the African Union that this is the right way to go, that we need to introduce certain amendments for the ICC statute to serve us better, then it's good for our future purposes, because the way we find evidence of acceptability of certain laws of international law within states is through expressions by diplomatic correspondences, by pronouncements by regional bodies like the African Union presidents. So if they have expressed strong sentiments about especially attendance of heads of state in the future, and it's acceptable within the state parties, then that is where we want to be in the future. So it's not necessarily that this will benefit us today. And I think that is the problem of trying to make a law or trying to alter a law to serve particular interests at a particular time without looking at the future. But I think it will be, if that is the way we want to go to the future, and if such amendments pass, then they will be serving us in the future.
The Secretary for Foreign Affairs is on record having said, well, on earth did you hear of a sitting head of state appearing in court to charge to answer criminal charges, which implied that perhaps the president will not go, because that's what the view of his minister. And therefore, what do we understand about that?
Well, that brings about the issue of immunity of heads of state and whether they can be prosecuted while they are sitting. The issue has been subject of debate over time, and as early as the year 2004, when the Special Court for Sierra Leone had issued an arrest warrant against Charles Taylor. Charles Taylor lodged an objection to the arrest warrant being issued against him, arguing that he was, at the time the arrest warrant was issued, he was still a sitting president, and hence he could not be subjected to the jurisdiction of such a court. But we see under international law, immunity of heads of state applies only to preventing the head of state from being prosecuted by another state. It's only within, it only applies to preventing him from being prosecuted by another state. But when it comes to international crimes that are being prosecuted by international tribunals or international courts, the Special Court for Sierra Leone in 2004 determined that Charles Taylor was not immune. There has also been another case before the International Court of Justice, where an arrest warrant was issued by Belgium against a Congolese foreign affairs minister. And the court determined that a state cannot issue an arrest warrant against another head of state. But this does not apply to international tribunals and international courts, where for instance, there is a prosecution of a head of state before an international tribunal for an international crime. So it's not new. Former heads of state have been prosecuted. We've seen Milosevic before the International Criminal Tribunal for Yugoslavia. And the law does not bar a sitting head of state. The Rome Statute, we're party to the Rome Statute. Article 27 says that official capacity is irrelevant. So, and we are party to that.
But
so
isn't that what they want to change? So that sitting heads of state don't appear there?
That will present a particular problem, in that the Rome Statute was formed on the basis that states at that particular time were determined to eliminate any forms of impunity. And it would go against the objectives and ideals of the Rome Statute if there was going to be immunity given to heads of state, and heads of state could not be prosecuted. It would defeat the whole purpose of the Rome Statute, and I don't think such an amendment can pass, in my own opinion.
But that's exactly what the Attorney General is saying. They have negotiated for months that those the current one is that heads of state don't be charged there. Well, that's the crucial one.
Well,
and that's what they hang around. That maybe if they postpone Uhuru's appearance for 1 year, and then they pass those amendments, then that period will have lapsed, and therefore Uhuru will not have to appear.
I don't think it's an amendment that would pass.
Why not?
First, because of the requirement that such an amendment has to be supported by 2/3 majority of
Africa is 81.
Isn't it supported by quite a number?
Africa itself is
Amina Mohammed is going with 81 heads of state.
Yeah.
Where do we get the number 81?
I don't know. That's an issue per se.
Well, those are the reports that we've received. Let's work with that. If it's true, 81 heads of state.
Well, if it passes, if it's true that such an amendment will pass, then it will be really a game changer in terms of what the ICC stands for, because the message out there will be like that: if you are a head of state, even if you're accused of whichever crimes, you are not going to stand trial. I don't think it's the message the ICC would want to pass, and such an amendment would not easily pass. If you look at the statements that were coming out of the votes that was carried out at the UN